She really thought she could cheat on me and get me to raise his child. I don't have many people in my life right now, but I hope you can all celebrate this modest win with me. My ex and I had been dating for 4 years. The day I discovered out she'd been cheating on me, I went out shopping for an engagement ring. She'd been with the man for 6 months, and he just recently found out about me, about the time I found out about him. He presented her with an ultimatum, and she selected him. I was sad, but I couldn't be with a cheater, so I spent the next month and a half working additional jobs and increasing my gym time to distract myself from her. I blocked her and her family since they are horrible people in general. Everything was peaceful until I received a text from an unknown number. It's my ex calling to tell me she's pregnant and that I'm the father. I don't believe her, but it's better to be cautious than sorry for the sake of my possible kid. I offer to have a paternity test performed. She refuses, claiming that he and I were the only guys she'd been with in years, and he'd previously tested negative, therefore it had to be mine. I keep pressing on getting the test, and after much back and forth, she says she will arrange one and that we should meet up beforehand and then proceed to the clinic to have the test. I agree since she finally agreed to take the exam. So we decided to meet in a coffee shop close to the clinic. I'm anticipating a discussion on what to do if I wind up being the father. Instead, she attempts to convert the discussion into a reminiscence of the good old days when we were together, complete with a slew of sentimental memories. I am trying to refocus the discussion on the kid and the test, but she continues returning to relationship talk about how she misses what we had. I'm so worried about the prospective kid I'll have to care for that I don't see what she's doing to persuade me to take her back. When it's time for us to head to the clinic, she asks if I have any plans for the day and if I want to go have a bite to eat and hang out at her apartment for a little. I replied that my sole intentions for the day are to bring her to the clinic for our paternity test and then figure out what to do next. I simply want to get this garbage out of the way. Why not take a stroll down memory lane? Then she leaves herself to visit the restroom and returns a few minutes later, explaining that the clinic had phoned and she needed to reschedule. I questioned her whether she was telling the truth when she stated they had phoned while she was in the restroom, and she responded no. So I dialed the clinic, and she panicked out and claimed she had never arranged the appointment. At this point, all doubts concerning the child's paternity dissipated. I persisted in pressing her for the truth, and she eventually broke down and told me. A paternity test revealed that the new lover was the father. When he found out, he ghosted her and she hasn't been able to find him since. She freaked out and informed her mother, who advised her to come to me about becoming the baby's father since I'm an upstanding guy who would do what is right and raise this kid. Said by the lady who previously said she'd sooner die than let me into her family. So, after getting the truth, or at least part of it, out of her, I got up and went without saying anything further. I got home and have received hundreds of messages from my ex, her family, and her friends, all of whom have created new accounts to contact me begging me to take her back, calling me an idiot for leaving her, and one man who simply keeps sending me images, which I find incredibly amusing. Thank you to everyone who stuck with me through my ranting and recounting of these events. Walking away from her and finally recognizing I'm better off without her has been such a liberating feeling, and I hope I can keep it for a long because I needed it. Story 2. Wife cheated. A lot, even with family. It changed me. For real. My wife, 27 female, and I, 28 male, have been married since high school. Before we met, she had a history of being hoey. I took a gamble and fell head over heels in love with her. I dropped everything to be with her. In retrospect, it was completely poisonous. She became pregnant with our daughter, who is my whole world. I was given life by welcoming my darling human into this planet. When my daughter was a year old, I discovered that my wife had cheated on me 9 months before she became pregnant with my twin brother. I recall nudging her and saying, I hope you got pregnant off of that 9 months before she was born. It's a mystery that I'm comfortable with not knowing whether I'm the father, and I'm not even sure it's conceivable given that we're twins. My wife and I have never discussed it. His wife and I worked together, and one day we departed early. I pretended to be him in order to sign their marriage contract since we are similar and he couldn't leave work. That day, his wife came on to me, and I told him, I want to see whether my wife would do it to me, he replied, taking my phone. I believe he felt bad, which prompted him to tell me about him and my wife. I was stunned and heartbroken. I instructed my wife to visit her parents. She did it. I realized I had to give her a lesson, even though I wanted to put it behind me and act like it never happened. I heard reports that when she was staying at her mother's house, she began flirting with a guy at work. I awoke vomiting on me. I went up there to kick his, and her vehicle was parked outside, but she wasn't there. She put her time cards in the floor of her vehicle, and when she came to pick up our kid, I would steal them so I could construct a case against her because I believed she was always at work and never with our daughter. I was so desperate for her to quit talking to that man that I assured her I'd forget about everything else. Be her Prince Charming and be persistent, or my daughter will be calling someone else dad, her father warned me. She's only trying to figure out who she is. This is what occurs when you're a kid and want to play home, and so on. I screamed and screamed to get it to stop. It didn't work. It came to a halt as I came to a halt. She freaked out when I quit trying to make it work. We eventually relocated to Utah to start again. I accepted a job promotion, and we relocated to Utah. I was upbeat, and she grew depressed. I'd return home on my lunch break every day and cook for my family to get them excited about the new life. She remained unhappy and expressed a desire to return home. She moved in a few weeks before I did. She remained with me and my family. While I was finishing up my job in Utah and packing our house, my mother went to my aunt's home, where my wife was spending the day, and she had a glass door with shapes that were just visible through it. I could see my younger brother and wife lying on the sofa through a little piece of glass. When she rang the doorbell, she saw them leap up and adjust their belts. She called my wife and summoned her mother to pick her up. I had no clue what had occurred since my mother was aware that this was the second sibling she had done this with. I had no idea what was going on and informed my wife that I thought we needed a break. She was aware that I was unaware. I eventually had with my boss's daughter. I realized that was stupid of me, and I attempted to tell my wife about it, but she shut me off. I eventually found out why. I traveled to my aunt's place, where my mother spent the night with me. At 2 a.m., my wife was blowing up my phone. She was inebriated and had just left the pub. She was terrified and sobbing. My mother awoke and said, "Does she want?" I was taken aback when my mother mentioned that. My mother then responded, "I'll take her home." Again, I was astounded. "No," I responded, "I'll do it." My mother yelled, "I saw her Derek, my other brother. Who is the next person on her list? My spouse, who is also my father." My mother screamed. I drove her to her mother's house. I inquired, "Did you screw my brother?" She declined. She stepped out of the vehicle and said that she was going to commit herself as a result of the rumor. She was going to commit herself since we weren't together. She was inebriated and lying on the ground, crying that she wanted to die. I drove her to her mother's house, where my daughter was since it was her night, and sat in her bed with her until she fell asleep, just to make sure she didn't do something dumb. I sobbed while waiting for her to fall asleep. A few years later, I get a Facebook video chat invitation from her ex-girlfriend. Boyfriends when she returned to her hometown to see her other family. She informed me my wife was who had broken up their family. I handed her my vehicle, and she sent me a video of my wife contacting her boyfriend to tell him her tire was flat. My tire pressure indicator remained on, and I knew this was correct. She then sent me pictures of my wife nude. My wife sent me the identical photos. When I asked my wife whether they were having, she responded no. I informed her that for some reason, I'm no longer bothered by this type of nonsense, and she burst into tears. She had an affair with this guy's closest buddy. My wife has improved significantly since then. She is a wonderful mother. She went to therapy. I despise how she continuously accuses me of cheating. Every morning, she makes the bed. That is what extraordinary individuals do. I don't look at her phone. I'm not accusing her of infidelity. Every time I discovered anything, I questioned her, "Did you cheat?" She always said no. I didn't look any farther because I didn't want to know. I remember asking, "Lord, let me be lied to," because I didn't want to cope with the situation because I didn't want to respond. Because I knew that if I reacted, other people's lives would be jeopardized, my children, my parents, my siblings, and even my wife. I shielded them, despite the fact that I had nothing to do with it. Here's the issue, it's been 4 years. I'm still keeping everything bottled up since I never handled it. I know I should have walked away. I guess I threw it in her face at least 3 times. You destroyed me, saw me broken, and I had to put me back together because you lied, and this is who I am now, he said once. He's as tough as. We attempted marital therapy, and I found myself becoming defensive in order to defend her and have her back. She sought private therapy, which helped her. When it occurred and I attempted to speak about it, I saw her stress out and thought to myself, oh God, the guilt would force her to harm herself, so I immediately stopped up and shut down. I'm not as affectionate as she is. I'm not comforting you. Perhaps I never forgave her as a result of this? I sometimes consider holding her hand. Then I remember, don't break down your defenses or you'll be injured. Things is pointless for me to attempt to straighten it out now that all the garbage has expired. Don't hold it in, is my suggestion. That is hardly the mark of a hero. That is enabling and will lead to your self-destruction.